Hello. Aloha.
Mm. Happy to see you. Happy to see you. Ah, you want to look at everyone here? We'll take a little time to do that. Mm. Mm. I read recently that each of our individual ways that we breathe are like a fingerprint, that it's so individual that they think that there's a way to shift to identifying us with our breath patterns rather than a fingerprint. I thought that was perfect for Vipassana, as we all know that we're each very individual in how we breathe, and there's no right breath. So I thought that was an interesting way to begin the sitting today, that just that sense that there is no right moment to moment sixth or sensed or awareness. It just flows for each of us just as it is. Vipassana being with the nature of how things are. And often it's helpful to begin with some Brahma Vihara of some sort. I thought today we could start with a little kindness, care, and appreciation, gratitude. Just as you let your attention settle around your body. And starting to shift to receiving the sensations, kind of like listening to an orchestra of music. In fact, it's just like listening to your favorite music or music, listening to the body sensation, receiving them like music. Just noticing if there can be an opening or softening around the range of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feeling tone. And to see if you can care about that, be kind. for things appearing just as they are. And appreciating our aliveness with that range of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. And if you can, just checking to see, can we receive the care, the kindness, the appreciation or gratitude? And just with that appreciation, shifting to hearing, just that appreciating that we can hear. And then shifting to being with the appearance, life, and disappearance of the sounds as best you can, just as they're happening. The life of sound coming and going by itself. And again, checking into noticing or distinguishing the thoughts about the experiences of the sounds and the direct experience of receiving textures, vibration, just as they are. Vibrations, textures of our hands, if we can at times without a visual image, the memory of that visual image. And we can appreciate that we understand the concept and but not be limited by a word that prevents us from experiencing the direct experience. moment by moment aliveness, never the same. Receiving the movement of the breath. And of course, visual images will come and go. Just connecting with this movement just as it's happening. With that willingness for it not to be known from past memory. And as we settle in with that calm and stillness, and at times just letting the attention be immersed in this sixth sense door, moment to moment flow. As best we can at time. If there's pleasant, unpleasant, neutral thinking, letting them come and go, just like sound. That range of compassion, happiness, kindness, enthusiasm, joy, gratitude, anger, loneliness, sadness, fear, outrage, frustration, attachment. It's again that sense of just letting it all come and go, just as it is. Not me, not mine, not I. aliveness of the body, mind, heart. Valuing our relationship of wisdom and love with whatever appeared and disappeared.
Thank you, Michelle. And thanks, everyone. Nice to sit together. So we do have some time this afternoon for any questions that you may have about your practice, about the instructions. You can do, if you have a question, just like Julia has done, you can if you look on the bottom of your screen, there's a button that says raise hand. You can click on that and your little yellow or whatever color you've chosen hand will raise. We'll know you have a question. Or you can type into the chat that you have a question or wave your real hand around, and we tend to see that as well. So yeah, it could be anything. And we know people just had so much momentum coming off of the online retreat last week. You might just feel very stable. Not much is happening in the world. Might just feel smooth. But in case you had questions, we thought we'd take a little time for it. Julia, can you unmute there? Let's see. Yes, great.
Yeah. Hello, Jesse, Michelle, Sangha, everybody. Well, I thought about asking about whether I should ask it, and then I actually thought about asking if you would like not post it, but maybe I'll just. So I'm having a new experience, and what is my motivation of sharing? I want to get the most juicy Dharma morsels out of it, but I also want to make sure I'm not too much. Or no, that's not it either. Any story I try to make up about it doesn't fit. So maybe I should just be kind and relax. But I thought I'd run it by you to see if you. I did a long retreat and I've been back for 3 weeks. And while I was away, my landlady was served papers by civil rights. My signature is involved because I was interviewed and told the truth and can't find anywhere to move. So her behavior and the things she says have been mind-boggling and jarring. And I feel like usually when I do a long retreat, like maybe you were joking, but usually it's like I let myself be gradual and things kind of sink in and I thought, oh, this is freed up, and then gradually I realized it was just the causes and conditions and concentration, but it's like a gradual sort of re-entry. And this was like exceedingly jarring. So what I'm experiencing, sorry, this is sounding really long, but I'm experiencing trembling. And like the mind keeps making stories. Like, I don't feel like I'm being traumatized. But then I'm like, I wonder if it's like waking the tiger where it could be trauma, but I'm shaking right away. But like, I mean, I've been like when she stands outside with the helmet and the weed whacker staring in my window more than one day in a row, I just start shaking. And or when she has mind-boggling, untruthful statements, and I have a time budget to write the rebuttal. Sometimes I I read certain statements and I just start shaking. So it's been a very different re-entry, and it's just I can't find like one thought habit or thought pattern or emotion or like one certain specific clinging thing that is really involved. It feels more like this direct, it's almost like I get plugged into an electric sort of shocking device and then I just kind of wait and it goes away. But like today, like I went for a walk, or but it's not like I'm really practicing with it. I'm more like, okay, I just need to step away, go for a walk. So I'm wondering if either of you have ever had this like trembling experience, and um because I'm generally pretty like stable and smooth re-entry, and it's just very new for me. So thank you.
I just have one question. Can you hear me? Yeah. If you had to put a name of an emotion on it, like a concept, would you be able to say, oh, anxiety or fear? I mean, you're having the corresponding physical sensations with something. And sometimes when we're quiet, it's not like there's a repeating thought pattern. It can just be the body is registering feeling unsafe.
Yeah. I mean, that's a possibility, and I appreciate your fishing because I'm fishing and I want help fishing. But yeah, I mean, one would think anxiety or fear because it's shaking. But it doesn't quite click just right, to identify it as that.
Well, I'll ask one more thing and then maybe but there's some kind of, you're describing that there is some impact happening, and maybe naming of it other than impact is enough. But I would definitely call it, you could think of it as impact.
Impact.
It's
Yeah.
like if the wind comes through a tree, there's going to be impact.
Yeah.
Right?
That fits better. Like impact. Yeah, like the wind, like just profound overstimulation and not knowing how to like discharge somehow. Yeah.
Well, there's a word voltage too, but impact seems the voltage or impactor is what I would possibly call it, because sometimes it's very helpful to get conceptual in situations like this. It isn't always helpful to try to not. It can be helpful to put a context on what's happening.
Conceptual meaning like, oh, voltage is like this, impact is
Voltage, yeah, yeah.
Or
It's
like
like
you are in danger, conceptual. I mean, I
right,
think that
right.
the
Exactly.
I'm not
okay. Okay.
I'm not sure like identifying the process of identifying an emotion that you don't feel or that you're not aware of or that's not obvious. It's like interesting, but on some level, but it's not necessarily I think it's like you're in interesting territory around what is the value of the exploration on the kind of Vipassana level of trying to sort of understand what's happening. And there's a part of that in the Vipassana, which is that you don't go looking for anything that's not obvious. You just feel what's clear.
Okay.
And there's shaking, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something like there to talk about, right? And like there can be many, as Michelle is starting kind of, you know, getting into, it's like there's sometimes that it can come out of concentration, right? A kind of like involuntary movement and shaking. Sometimes it's on a very subtle level, things just feel like they're trembling. Um, if it's, you know, if it's bigger than that, and then there's things like, right, fear, trauma. I mean, there's all kinds of other mechanisms that can be at play. So I think that there's something to be like explored there. But I think kind of what Michelle's pointing to also, it's like it's not happening at random times. It's happening when she's staring at you through the window in a menacing way, right?
Yeah.
Or that you're involved in like reporting her
Yeah.
behavior. So
Yeah.
my guess is it's probably something around that. And and so that I think like maybe the more meaningful question is like, okay, well, so is also kind of like what's the process at this point in terms of like there's been a civil rights complaint, what direction does that go in, and what are your what are your options, how does it get resolved, what's the best scenario, and how confident are you feeling in her mental kind of like an emotional stability to be kind of confronted around this, right? I mean, I know that was a concern of yours before you decided to do it.
Yeah. Um, I was kind of hoping I'd find a new dwelling by now,
Mm-hmm.
but I have engaged with this process and feel committed. And I believe that there will be a finding that leads to mandatory mediation. So I'm right now, it's more of a process of like, I chose to do this, I want to do this. I also want to enjoy the fruit of the retreat that I was just on. And so it's like seeing, I want to get the rebuttal done. So it's a balancing act because I love um, I love breathing in spaciousness and feeling connected with a much bigger sense of the world and being. And then when I sit down to write, it's thoughts that I think are useful to write down. And then it's like, oh, trying to keep this thought in mind till I write it down is like this. And so things get really small because I'm trying to write and remember things. So there's like I would prefer, given my druthers, nibbana to samsara. And I have vowed to be free of clinging to either one of them. Uh, Michelle's talking.
Oh, sorry. What can be interesting in these situations is that you can get attached to that. And so if you are placing yourself in the situation, then you'll have to see that there's an attachment. And that's the suffering, right? The suffering is that you're not wanting to feel the mind getting small or unspacious, but actually that's what's happening.
Yeah.
right? It's
And
like,
and that's what's required from the decision to be engaged in this process with your housing, right? So there's that
Yeah.
dance. I mean, it's like such a kind of amazing example of this dance, right? As sort of lay people who are also wanting to practice intensively, and like this sort of back and forth, and the requirements of one container versus another. And there
Yeah.
it's something to be said about like, well, if you're doing this thing in the world and there's like like the law like requires you to like be getting in detailed and small, and be recording these kinds of incidents, and like
Yeah.
this that then that's like you can't have it both ways, I think, is actually like an important thing to recognize at times, right? That it's like the retreat mind and that kind of beauty of practice happens within the safety of those conditions, and you're choosing to be in conditions that feel less safe. And I think still is a question of like, are they less safe, which is always like an important, or how much less safe are they? It is like something to keep going back to. But regardless of the actual concern about your well-being, you've changed the container, and the container isn't going to me, that it's you have two tides pushing against each other. That feels, I can imagine trembling with that. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like those things are going to be like kind of counter forces that your heart, to me, that feels like there's a reason why there's a kind of palpitation in that, to me, you know.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So the rebuttal is related. Oh yeah, Michelle, you go.
I want to just stay with this because for anybody who comes out of retreat,
Uh-huh.
a long retreat, um, there are aspects that are very unpleasant, and part of part of deepening equanimity is actually coming out of a long retreat and dealing with this stuff, whatever we're dealing with. It's like there's a lot of unpleasant stuff. You're really protected on a retreat, and so the conditions for spaciousness and openness are more like that. And so when you come into, like, i've had I've had so many retreats where it come off and it's like a bomb went off. You just have to deal with it. But it's like it's a choice, right? To
A choice
choose.
to go on retreat or a choice to deal with the landlady? Because I mean, I
It's
kind
a
of
choice to be. It's a choice to be a lay person,
okay.
and it's a choice to go on a long retreat.
Yeah.
And it's usually most of us have to come back to our household lives at some point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have learned so much from that process of the attachment to these more subtle, less mundane states are just attachment, right? The suffering is not the shaking. The suffering is in wanting the goodness of the spaciousness and openness, right?
Yeah. Maybe that's it.
I think I'm going to
Yeah.
encourage you to look at it because um, you've just shifted into a much less refined atmosphere,
Yeah. That's true.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Significantly. So
And you might not be noticing that it's unpleasant,
okay.
but it sounds unpleasant to me.
Maybe I should just be like unpleasant, unpleasant, unpleasant.
I was just heading that way with you. Yeah, that
Okay.
that would be my wish for you.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's to start. This sounds, I would put this in the category of unpleasant.
Yeah, I guess rather than trying to be lofty and totally free and yeah, like just acknowledge. Yeah, you're right. Maybe I was skipping a step. Really like the
Well, it's
step.
it's the idea of freedom. The freedom is not trying to get back to anything in the past.
Yeah.
Freedom being with what's happening in the present, no matter how much we don't want it to be happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know,
that's
there's
how, let me just,
yeah.
that's how equanimity develops.
It is.
Yeah. You can't be equanimous in your household life if you just want it to be like a long retreat. It just can't, it can't replicate it.
Yeah, I kind of want to get things done and get them all checked off my list so that my house feels like the perfect retreat.
Right.
So you wanting.
No, it's of course, but it's
So unpleasant, wanting.
Right.
Okay.
That's great. And it's hard. It's hard,
Yeah.
but you can
there's
do it.
nothing wrong with wanting a haven for yourself. You know what I mean? It's not that it's understandable, of course, you know.
Thank you.
And to think about that, it's very brave, really, what you're trying to do. You know, that courageous on a number of levels, but including spiritually. You know, that sense of like you're going to, you know, defend your dignity and your rights, and you want to not diminish yourself in the world or in relationship with this person and this place, but at the same time you're staying in relationship, right? You're you're not trying to kind of either even banish this person from your heart, right? Of just like that they're the enemy, or you know
Right.
that you're really trying to walk this line of holding yourself and this other person in your heart. And
Yeah.
that's very difficult, and it's very rare that people even try, and that you're maintaining the conditions under which you are physically, you know, present with them, at least, you know, some of the time, that there's some shared space, and
Yeah.
that's a very intense. And I think that it makes sense that you, of course, have had the hope to maybe try to find housing elsewhere, but that's kind of at the heart of the issue, is around housing.
Right.
Um, so I think that it's just to also give yourself some credit of what you're trying to do in that case, but also just as any of us going on retreat and coming back on retreat, like getting so sensitive and getting, you
Yeah.
know, a taste of like something so pure and so beautiful in the heart,
Yeah.
and then having to come back into conditions that are not as supportive of it, and
That's
doing
what.
that kind of digesting that Michelle's talking about, and the
Yeah.
process of integrating it, you know, over time is very hard. I mean, so there's layers of, you know, that courageousness, you know, that you're operating in. And you see, but you also want to be as careful as you can in that too, you know, that it's like you have to recognize actually what a tall order it is you're asking of your self, include, you know, that's your mind, heart, and your body, you know, in terms of just like going through this, and you know, staying present to everything that's happening. So it's a lot, you know, it sounds like really a lot. And I'm sure we both would encourage you to just really do what you can to just be careful, right? With internally and externally, you know, of like, where do you continue to get breaks, taking, like you said, take a walk, get out of that space at times if it feels just too kind of toxic.
Yeah.
Where at some point does that need to be the priority, you know, in a bigger way, to be open to that. And of course, if this person, if there's situations under which it feels like, you know, really threatening, that you're not afraid to like make a choice of, you know, whatever, calling the police or something like that,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
things are very, you know, we don't really know necessarily what's happening outside of ourselves, and that's
Yeah.
part of the fragility of the world we're living
I
in.
don't
Yeah.
think it would come to that with her. There's just kind of real weirdness, and
Yeah.
she's in her own world. So, but
Yeah.
I really appreciate both of these pieces, like your direct validation and saying, well, actually, this is really hard. And that's reasonable, but, and then also the piece of just to really not supportive conditions, unpleasant, wouldn't it be nice if they were pleasant, but they're not, and, and so, yeah, impact and meeting the, yeah. So this is, I'm glad I asked. Thank you both.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
thank you.
Looks like Karen and Jean. Oh, Karen, maybe Jean. We'll see. Let's see. Can you unmute there, Karen? Oh, there you go. Hi.
Hi,
Hi.
Karen.
So I had my surgery on Tuesday, and I was in the hospital for 5 days, basically. And the first two were really rugged, and the second one, the ones after that, I just wanted to get the hell out of there. I can't say that I was meditating or anything, partly because every 5 minutes they do something in the middle of the night, you know. But I guess I'm very relieved it went well. I have to be on a liquid diet for I think another 10 days, which I'm having some issues with. I'm just I can't I'm really relieved. I mean, it was a big deal to me. I haven't had a big surgery since I was 13, and that was a horrendous experience. So there's that. But I'm also finding myself bored and kind of grumpy and but glad, you know. But you know, I didn't really just meditate. You know, I'm having a hard time sitting still. I have to these liquids that I drink. You know, luckily I found something that is called Premier Protein, and it's got a lot of protein and not much sugar. But I'm still, it's just weird, and I'm also very tired from the whole thing. And as I said, you know, waking up to taking my blood pressure 4 times a day, and because it's high, it was higher. The arm really hurts when they do it. It's all electrical stuff now, and just I can't say that I had much. This is not the right use of the word, but Vipassana in me, and and I feel kind of lost and kind of bewildered. On the other hand, the nurses were so kind and so lovely, and I kept feeling like this is kind of making up for my childhood here. You know, my mother didn't like me, and these guys were, you know, I got to go to the bathroom, I want a warm blanket, you know, but they just would come in and be kind. And so there was this other thing going on that I was kind of being reparented, and also seeing what a good parent would do. Not in a resentful way, because, you know, I know I know what happened. But just interesting. And my partner came in every day, and it's just like the abundance of the universe was over here, and the irritation and the lostness and the everything transformation was over here, and I just feel sort of disjointed, I guess. And I wouldn't have asked this question if there were more people in line. I said, come on, guys, you know, please. So that's my sort of question.
I think it's great. I mean, I can start with just, I mean, I've the the last 4 or 5 months I've spent a lot of time in various hospitals with my mom and a lot of emergency rooms, and they all have like their particular flavor of dukkha and and sukha. And I mean, I think that you're describing something very powerful about aspects of what that's like. And I don't, you know, I understand how you kind of might have aspirations for something um, deeper or whatever, something else, but that actually, I think what you're really describing to me makes a lot of sense. And I'll just say a little bit about that. I mean, the, on the one hand, there is the sense of like being ill and having surgery and having a recovery from that, like that there's just physical trauma, physical suffering, hardship in the body is taxing, right? That and that there's it's taxing on the body, obviously, but it can be very humbling to see the way that it's also very impactful on the mind. That
Mhm.
you just don't have the same amount of energy and the energy to be interested, right? Like the that Vipassana energy of like, oh God, the trying to observe something, bringing your attention to something and maintaining it there, right? Just that vitaka and vichara are very difficult in perfect conditions. And then when you have something that is both physically draining because you've been cut open and they're tinkering around in there in whatever way that's helpful, hopefully, like that is exhausting onto the body, that the body is putting tons of energy into healing and recovering and repairing that you're not aware of. You know what I mean? You can't watch that, you don't see it in the same way, but it's happening. And then of course you're in the hospital and there's something scary about it and there's something very humbling about it and very, you can't avoid but feel doubt and concern for yourself and sometimes whatever, all of those things. So to me, there's nothing surprising about the fact that being in that condition and in that place and in the sort of state that you found, more just sort of like grumpiness and irritation and restlessness and wanting to get out of there, on one side. And then I don't think you can diminish the power of the other side of it that you're
Mhm.
describing. I mean, that people's kindness in those conditions, I mean, I just can't even tell you how incredible so much of the last 4 or 5 months were for me and for my mom and for all of our family, like everybody, right? I mean, it's like doctors, nurses, PAs, attendants, the cleaning, the folks who like clean the
Yeah.
rooms were like so nice and so connected, and just how incredible, how
I,
healing that
I
is.
actually said to them, it's amazing to find people who are trained to be kind, because there's so much unkindness right now.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah, and also because of the way I was raised to ask for anything, I got shit. And so um, it kind of blew my mind on this side, and this side was, ah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's very powerful. I think what you're describing is very powerful, and I think it doesn't always feel like we maybe hope or imagine it will, but that you've gone through something and that we can sometimes that sense that we can actually like other people's kindness is something we can actually rely on is like hard to fathom at times.
And
But
receive.
that yeah, but that you experienced that, right? That you actually it was consistent enough. It wasn't just like one person that you don't trust their kindness. Like it keeps happening, and so there's a sense of like, oh, this is a real support, and there's something very beautiful in that, So and of course the feeling that it went well and you're back home and you're recovering. I mean, of course that side of things also can take much longer than we I think aspire or anticipate or whatever. So
Mhm.
you know, that your energy comes back slowly, you know, the capacity to be interested comes back slowly, and maybe that sense of if there's a new kind of opening to kindness and care and appreciation, you know, those things, like maybe that is a little bit more of like the kind of natural direction that it takes. You know, you can reflect on these moments that you had with people while you were under their care, and you know, that's a happening in the present moment. You know, that is like a good, wholesome reflection right now. And like you're saying, in a time where there's so much cruelty and just meanness, and it's like to feel like, oh, your actual human interactions with people at a point of crisis were gentle and kind and supportive. It's pretty
Well,
good.
I'm noticing. Can you hear me?
It got just a little choppy right now, but I think if you keep talking, it'll come through.
Okay. I was going to say one of the things I'm noticing is I'm home now, and I'm more wanting to be. I'm quite weak, not terribly. I mean, I can walk. I'm not using the used the walker the first day, but I'm reluctant to ask people for things. Okay. Jesse, so.
Yeah, you're
Jesse,
breaking up a little bit, but I think I heard what she said. It was just now
could you translate that?
yes, I speak broken Zoom.
Right.
I think that now that she's home, that she's kind of, you know, going through it still, but is reluctant to ask people for things, right? To help.
Yeah, that's what
which is understandable, you know, even though you're getting stronger and you're not like, could I get another cup of ice? You know, or whatever. You know, it's like, yeah, it's very, you get treated well there. So I don't know, Michelle, if you have any thoughts on that.
I think you covered it, but I think, Karen, that
Go ahead.
I had an experience way back. Can you hear me okay, Karen?
Yeah.
Okay. When I was very new practice, but heard a story about the Buddha when he was, some lifetime back. There's a lot of the Buddha to be in other lifetimes, and one was.
Oh no, Michelle, now you're cutting out.
Huh.
I really thought we fixed that thing. Hold on. Yeah, maybe pull that thing out and just you'll talk to the thing.
How's that?
Good.
Is that better?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a story about him in a former life where he was having his arms and legs cut off, and he had great compassion. My earphones are talking. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, but you can take your earphones off because they're not connected anymore. There you go.
So I had read that story, and he had all this equanimity and compassion going through his arms and legs getting cut off. And then I didn't have health insurance at the time, and I had to have surgery, but outpatient, and it shouldn't have been outpatient. It's a long story, but it was a incredibly awful, painful experience for days after. And I kept thinking of that story. And I was measuring myself to that level of how I should be versus how I actually was, which included grumpy and aversive, right? And so that experience taught me so much because I could see so clearly how much I was comparing myself with an ideal that actually taught me everything about how I teach. Because I really got freedom has nothing to do with if you're grumpy. Like it's like learning how to be okay with being grumpy and not taking it personally, all that interest. Of course, you might not have managed to be perfectly interested in grumpiness, but that's the idea. The idea is not to think you shouldn't have been this or you shouldn't have been that, or you shouldn't have trouble asking for what you need after a lifetime of that, right? Like it's a lot of it is just like learning how to stop and pause where we are and just shift into seeing if we can have some care or tenderness or understanding, right? It's that including what's difficult, rather than thinking freedom is somehow overriding that and getting rid of it. So that, so I would include, coming from a similar background, that it might be the hardest thing you do is asking for what you need. So you,
So I should celebrate my grumpiness.
what? I didn't hear that.
I should say, so I should celebrate my grumpiness.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's been a long haul here. We had to postpone it twice. I was sick during that time. You know, it's been a long time. It's,
As I've been saying to my sister, chronic pain, a lot of chronic pain, the bandwidth, our bandwidth is not catching up to that. And so therefore there is grumpiness. It's okay.
yeah.
It's totally okay to be grumpy.
You know, it felt like sort of sliding back. I just noticed my reluctance to ask for help, you know, because they're not nurses. My partner isn't a nurse, you know, you know, that's not, but she's my partner. So, you know, it's like this.
Well, she might not be perfectly kind like the nurse, and that's
damn kind.
okay. You know, that's okay too, right? It's like that's part of all of the learning.
Yeah, she's kind. I feel bad, you know, because she's tired. It was a long haul for both of us. And
you're almost there. You're almost through
okay.
it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
I saw Richard and Margot and also Jean, but I don't know if Jean disappeared. So
Yeah,
there's
Margot saying no. Jean, did you have a question?
No, I wanted to hear Richard and Margot's question.
No.
I did have one, but I can wait until another time.
Excuse me, but I can't hear it at
Yeah.
this point.
You can hear. Okay, you're definitely your headphones are not connected, so it's not about that. Can you hear me?
But I can't hear the yogis.
You couldn't hear what Jean just said?
Nor hardly Karen, but I was reading her lips.
Turn the volume up on your computer.
Yeah.
Turn the
On your computer, on the keyboard, you know, there's I think it might be F12 on your keyboard up top. There's like three
Right.
different little volume buttons.
Aha, got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you keep talking so I can see?
Yeah. Is that any better? Yeah. Okay. So Jean, yeah, go for it. There may not be another time. I mean,
True. All right. I don't know if this is okay. Anyway, so I just noticed that I think more acutely than I ever have before, the difference in the kind of level of suffering depending on the input, you know. So for me, for example, when I see children, you know, having a hard time, I almost really can't bear it. You know, it's just like I'm really on an edge. It could be a little thing, you know, I'm like at Trader Joe's and there's this little girl, she needs to go to the bathroom and her father's walking her away from the bathroom and she's crying and I just want to grab this kid and bring her into the bath, you know, that kind of thing. It's like, and then I came up against something that was just really, really hard. And I just really had a hard time for a couple of days. Like I couldn't sleep and I really had to I just had to come up with all kinds of creative ways to work with it. So, there's so much suffering, and I'm thinking about, Kuan Yin, Michelle, and how you invoked, Kuan Yin during the retreat. And I do forget sometimes, the 1,000 arms and the receiving is of all the cries in the world, certainly, but also of all the joys in the world, But I just think like how, it's like Karen and many of us have been through such horrible things in our childhood, and we come through in somehow or another. But anyway, it's just that particular form of suffering. It's very, very hard, So that's it. I don't, yeah, I do wonder if you have thoughts on creative ways to work with those particular things that really just, get under our skin, get into our dreams, just get into our minds and hearts so deeply that it's really, it's tough not to be more reactive in the moment, even, just to say, hey, let me help you out. And, there's only so much you can do, right? Then you start to notice all the little things. So anyway, just it can get to be a lot of rubbing up against, the heart.
Jesse, I can start, but I think that Kuan Yin, that sense of the Buddha teaching about the proximate cause for the appearance of compassion is experiencing the helplessness and overwhelm, right? Like that's so important, that helplessness and overwhelm. I felt like so grateful when I heard that like that's actually a doorway to compassion, is being able to like let yourself experience that. Um, and then to usually we need compassion for ourselves as a first step at that point, right? Like, because where it starts to trigger the child, our childhood, or trigger other thing, whatever it's triggering, it's really helpful to get connected to caring about that pain in us. And then if we need to, you don't always have to go through that step, but that the care actually, it's hard to say this even like in what you just described, but the care is actually pleasant. It's not drowning in the situation, right? You can bring your attention so empathetic that you're so in it that you drown in that person's pain. Compassion is not that. It's not to say that's bad or wrong. It's not bad or wrong to do that, and that's so important. But it's like that is not what the purity of compassion is, which is a pleasant feeling of care. And actually, if you kind of got inside most situations, whether you can help by actually being able to help or fix something or not, my sense is always that if there's a witness that's caring, no matter what the situation is or where it is, or anywhere, even in time or space, a witness that's caring is everything. It's everything. And then you add in then the two wings of the bird, the equanimity, which is understanding that we're actually we're not responsible. We can't be responsible for everybody's pain in the world in the way that you're describing it. It's actually not, it's not even possible. But there is a way, again, that we can appreciate we're all living out karma, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. And again, you can witness with the greatest understanding of karma, which is not as punishment or blame, but just living out the imponderability of the suffering. Like that's a good thing to be practicing now. I mean, we all need much more than we have of this, of grasping the compassion and equanimity that's needed at this point in time, it's critical to kind of replaying that in your mind and seeing if you can come to a place of the care and peace with things as they are. It's not easy. But it's often having to go back at times with our own, if a tough childhood, and also do the same thing. It's like it's a similar process, which again, Jesse and I will bend over backwards, which is saying this does not mean condoning. This does not mean passivity or denial. It doesn't mean not doing something if you can. So that's the important part. That's my first round with it, Jean. I know it's really really tough. So Jesse, I'm assuming you have more, but yeah, it's good practice, Jean.
That's very helpful. It's helpful, and I think even in the moment when it's those are some of the creative ways, again, because of the beauty of the instructions that you've offered. I do have the sense of the imponderability of karma, and right, who knows what this suffering will push someone toward, but that idea of compassion can feel good even in a moment of suffering. That's a very interesting idea to explore. And the power of it across time and space is, yeah, it's really good to remember. Thank you. Yeah, and sorry, Jesse, yeah.
I think just that, like Michelle's, just the recognition of how hard it is, I mean, for any of us, it's like there are going to be things that really just hit us hard, and that, of course, in general, like, the vulnerability of children is like, it's unbearable, it can feel unbearable to the heart. And I think that sense, and this is that you're not trying to override the heartache, or the pain through the pleasure of the compassion either, right? So that it's just like this, you want to be honest about the impact and to the recognition, of pain, suffering, and all of the intensity of that, right? That on some level, this is a part of the training, is the opening to the truth of that, that it's the non-looking away, it's the non-denial of that in terms of just humanity or beyond humanity, of existence, right? That this is a fundamental aspect of things, and that has to be, that's the first noble truth. That's the foundation of the whole thing. And if that isn't seen clearly, the rest of it doesn't play, so that there's just both sides of it, of like, there's so much carefulness about not drowning in it and not, losing our lives to the wailing of the hardship in the world. But on the other hand, it doesn't mean that it's not like not denying it or not avoiding it or not feeling the sensitivity to that. And of course, that's the hardest thing, is to be both sensitive to that truth and that aspect of our lives and of the world, and to get to that, through that, the place of compassion and care and understanding, right? That comes through the fathoming of the nature of things. And when people behave certain ways, it propels other people to behave other ways, and it's like the whole thing keeps going along as it goes on, right? So that you look at the world and it's not mysterious. That's not mysterious at all, why the world is as it is, right? Because you can see one incident and you're like, how many billions of these are in one, one breath in the world, So, but it's the thing. So I think when you're talking about the most sensitive places, the most vulnerability, the most, yes, you have to be careful with how much you're like pushing that button, and kind of you understand, wow, it can take a few days to like kind of recover from something that like it's very impactful, and of course just coming off a retreat and you're more sensitive and that sense of stability with the suffering in ourselves or in the world or it just suffering is, like Michelle's saying, it's good practice. It's important practice. And you do want to, you have to figure out sometimes, how do you find your way back from the intensity of the kind of tumult that can create,
Mhm. Yeah, I think I know I was grateful to see just how hard it hit, just to see it and to know like that's, such a like I hadn't quite realized how sore, how tender that spot was until that and I have always known that I try to find a way to ease things where possible and back off if I'm going to look like a creep or something, like you have to be careful, right? But and to hold compassion wherever possible. But I think you're right. It was like coming off the retreat, and it just really became very clear how tender that was. So
Mm.
yeah.
There's a lot of grief in not being able to fix
Mm,
it. Yeah, it's like this,
mm,
the personal self
mm,
wants to be able to fix it, and that's not a bad thing, right? And
mm,
that being up against the magnitude, as Jesse's saying, get dukkha, we get it, like get it. It's
mm, mm,
a gradual process. Yeah.
mm, mm, Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jean.
Mm.
Mm. It's like really always amazing to just see how people are showing up in such powerful ways for these powerful times. Whatever examples we have, it's all, we know there's millions more intimate, more in the world. And so it's very moving, very inspiring. See everyone doing it, doing the work, trying our best. Challenging times, beautiful times. Mm. Good to see the humanity in everyone. Dhamma.
We're all needing a lot of compassion and equanimity right now.
Yeah. Take care, everyone. Yeah. Take care. Take care. Hopefully we'll see you next Sunday.